The day after the feast, the house holds its breath. The chairs still lean against the table, their cushions shaped by the weight of yesterday's laughter. A spoon rests where someone last stirred the gravy, its handle pointing toward nothing in particular, as if waiting to be taken up again. On the counter, a coffee mug sits half full, its warmth slipping away in the quiet. This morning, silence feels louder than the feast ever was. There is something about the day after, a stillness that isn't emptiness, but a different kind of fullness. Yesterday, the table overflowed. Plates were stacked high, conversations layered over one another, voices rising and tumbling like waves. But today, the air is thinner. You notice the details. The faint smell of roasted turkey still clinging to the curtains. The hum of the refrigerator carrying on with its steady duty, the light through the blinds spilling across crumbs left behind. And there, at the center of it all, a plate with scraps no one touched, a half-eaten roll, a few pieces of stuffing. It feels both ordinary and profound, evidence that there was more than enough. And now the question quietly lingers. If we had more than enough, why do we still wake up feeling like something is missing? Sometimes the coffee in the mug feels heavier than we are. We cradle it, sip it, but it seems to ask us questions rather than give answers. Was yesterday enough? Was I enough? Did I see the people around me, or did I just see the food? Did I notice love, or did I only notice portions? The day after the feast is not about turkey or pie. It is about what remains when the noise is gone. And if you are honest, this morning might feel a little hollow. The dishes wait in their towering stacks. The house echoes in a way it didn't yesterday. It almost feels like waking from a dream. Did it really happen? Or was it just one long performance of family togetherness, here and gone in a flash? But here's the thing. Life often hides its truest lessons in these quiet mornings. The feast shows us what abundance looks like, but the morning after reveals what abundance feels like. And the two are not always the same. Maybe today isn't asking you to fill the silence, but to listen to it. To hear what it has been trying to say all along, that gratitude isn't built in the moment of plenty, but in the moment of pause. Gratitude is not the table piled high. It is the half-empty plate, still waiting for your attention. It is the mug of coffee cooling slowly, reminding you that even simple warmth is worth noticing before it's gone. When you think about it, every feast has its shadow, and it is this. We can have too much and still feel too little. We can sit shoulder to shoulder and still miss the chance to truly see each other. We can fill our plates and still leave our hearts empty. This morning offers a different choice: to stop scrolling for the next sale, to resist the urge to rush into more, to see what is already here, the chair with its cushion still pressed by someone you love, the scent of food that lingers, the scraps that prove there was more than enough. The day after the feast, silence is not your enemy. It is your invitation, an invitation to notice what remains, to honor the traces of joy, and to let enough rise gently inside you. Take another sip of the coffee. Feel its warmth as it moves through you. Look again at the plate. It may be half empty, but it carries a story that's still unfolding. And maybe the story is this: gratitude doesn't begin at the table. It begins right here, in the pause that follows. So the question becomes, when the noise is gone, when the plates are only half full, when the mug is cooling in your hand, what will you choose to notice? Yesterday the table overflowed. Turkey carved in thick slices, pie cut into generous wedges, dishes stacked so high they nearly touched the lip of the counter. At one point, someone laughed so hard they nearly dropped the gravy boat, and the whole room erupted in relief as if the sound itself was a second dessert. And yet, today, there is a restlessness. The morning light doesn't land on joy the same way it did yesterday. Instead, it reveals the aftermath. Plates still crusted with food, glasses stained with rings, napkins crumpled like tired shoulders. The chairs are pushed back, empty, waiting for life to fill them again. Maybe you know this feeling. You went to bed full, too full perhaps, and still woke up hungry, not for food, but for something you can't name. You scroll your phone and see ads for Black Friday deals flashing across the screen, bigger TV, cheaper phone, shoes you never knew you needed. It's as if the world is whispering, you don't have enough yet. Keep reaching, keep filling, keep wanting. And somehow, part of you believes it. It's strange, isn't it? To sit at a table overflowing with abundance, surrounded by voices and laughter, and still feel the quiet echo of emptiness inside. To smile in the photos, to toast with glasses raised high, and yet leave the night wondering if you were truly seen. That's the hidden wound of the feast. Abundance does not always equal satisfaction. Presence does not always equal connection. Maybe yesterday you caught yourself glancing at the clock, measuring how long you could hold the smile before it cracked. Maybe you wished someone would ask how you were really doing. Or maybe you were the one who avoided asking others, afraid of what truth might spill out. The room was full, but the silence beneath the chatter was even fuller. We don't talk about this much because it feels ungrateful to admit. To say, yes, the table was full. And still my heart felt half empty. But honesty doesn't erase gratitude, it deepens it. It helps us see that enough has less to do with servings and more to do with presence. And so, the contradiction sits with us. Yesterday, food was piled high, but connection felt shallow. Today, leftovers wait in the fridge, but the longing is not for more stuffing or pie, it is for something less tangible, to be noticed, to be valued. To know that when you pulled up your chair, it wasn't just your body that was welcomed, but your soul. We live in a culture that tells us more is always better, that the answer to emptiness is another purchase, another plate, another distraction. But deep down, you and I both know that's not true. Because if more could fix it, then why do we still feel this ache after a night of abundance? The ache is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's life's way of whispering, there is a difference between being full and being fulfilled. Maybe that's the question the day after the feast is asking us. How can a table so full still leave us searching? The answer won't be found in the shopping cart or in another serving reheated at midnight. The answer waits in presence, in looking across the table and seeing more than dishes and food. It waits in noticing the way someone's laugh rises higher when they feel truly understood. It waits in pausing long enough to taste not just the meal, but the moment. It's easy to miss because hunger is louder than presence. Consumption is more familiar than connection. But the table that matters most is not the one covered in dishes. It's the one where your heart finally feels at home. So if you woke up restless today, you are not alone. If abundance left you aching, you are not broken. You are simply human, longing not for more portions, but for deeper presence. And presence begins with one quiet act, to notice what is already here. So, as you glance at the half-empty plate or lift the mug cooling in your hand, let the silence ask you a gentle question. Will you keep chasing more, or will you begin to notice enough? This morning, as I carried a plate of leftovers to the table, I heard a voice behind me. Why are we eating alone today? Yesterday felt different. It was such a small question, asked by a child whose feet barely reached the floor. But it cracked something inside me. The plate in my hand suddenly felt heavier, though it was stacked only with reheated stuffing and a slice of pie. It wasn't the food that weighed me down. It was the realization that abundance without connection had left us lonelier than before. I stared at the plate. It was full, but it looked empty. The bread, the vegetables, the cold slice of turkey, all there, and yet none of it satisfied. It struck me like a quiet thunder. If even here, surrounded by leftovers, surrounded by more than enough, I cannot feel full, then maybe the hunger I carry isn't for food at all. We don't often admit these cracks out loud. We prefer to smooth them over with busyness, with jokes about how much we ate or plans to burn it off at the gym. But in that moment, the silence after my child's question held more truth than all of yesterday's laughter combined. The truth was this: yesterday I ate plenty, but I did not always pay attention. I smiled, but sometimes it was a smile that skimmed the surface. I sat at the table, but I didn't always listen deeply. And now, here in the morning light, the price of that inattentiveness showed itself. If I keep living this way, chasing more food, more noise, more proof that I am enough, I will wake up one day and find I have missed the very moments that were supposed to matter most. That is the danger of never naming enough. You can keep stacking your plate higher, keep piling your calendar fuller, keep saying yes when your heart whispers no. And one day, you realize you have a house of abundance, but a spirit of scarcity. The child's question was simple: why are we eating alone today? But underneath it was another question, one that echoed through the room. Why do we still feel alone, even together? It is here, in these cracks, that the real reckoning happens, not in the loud feast, but in the quiet after. The day after asks you gently but firmly, if you can't be satisfied here, will you ever be satisfied anywhere? I looked again at the plate. A half-empty roll, a slice of pie gone soggy at the edges. And yet, that plate became a mirror. It reflected back a truth I had tried to avoid, that I was mistaking abundance for fulfillment. That I was chasing more while missing what mattered most. The moment of realization doesn't need to be dramatic. It often comes in whispers, a child's question, a pause you didn't plan for, a look across the table that lingers longer than usual. But when it arrives, it asks you to decide, will you keep covering the wound with more, or will you stop and tend to it with enough? The silence in the room stretched. I set the plate down, and for the first time since yesterday, I let myself feel both the fullness and the emptiness. They sat side by side, like uninvited guests, but they were honest. And in that honesty, something shifted. Because maybe the crack isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's the beginning. Maybe it's the opening that lets the light in, the space where truth can finally breathe. So I whispered, mostly to myself, I don't want to miss this anymore. That was the realization. That was the quiet turning point. Not a vow to change everything overnight, but a decision to begin noticing again, to pay attention to the scraps and the silence, to listen to the questions that rise in the spaces between words. The plate still sat on the table, still full, still lonely. But in my eyes, it had changed. It was no longer just leftovers. It was a teacher, asking me to see abundance differently, not as something to chase, but as something already here, waiting to be named. And so, the day after the feast whispered its challenge, will you let the crack become a wound, or will you let it become a doorway? Thoreau once wrote, a man is rich in proportion to the number of things he can afford to let alone. At first, those words sound almost upside down. How can letting go make us rich? Isn't richness about holding more, gaining more, owning more? That's what the world tells us every day. More money, more possessions, more experiences, more proof. And yet, here in the stillness after the feast, I find myself wondering if Thoreau saw something truer. Yesterday, we filled our plates. We filled our homes with laughter, noise, and maybe even a little chaos. But today, the measure of richness is not in what remains stacked in the fridge. It is in what we no longer feel the need to chase. The half-empty plate on the table, the cooling mug beside it, these simple remnants are teaching me something. They are showing me that wealth is not in another helping, another serving, another trip to the store. Wealth is in being able to sit quietly with what is already here and say, this is enough. That's hard in our culture. The morning after Thanksgiving is famous not for its quiet lessons, but for its frenzy. Black Friday sales, endless ads, doorbusters that invite us to wake before dawn and grasp for more. The world does not celebrate stillness. It markets urgency. But Thoreau's words invite us to consider another way. What if letting alone, the art of not needing to reach, was the true feast? There's a kind of courage in restraint, to say no when everyone else is rushing, to turn off the noise when everyone else is scrolling, to sip your coffee slowly while the world screams for your attention. That's not laziness, that's strength. It's choosing presence over performance, sufficiency over striving. I think about the way Thoreau lived at Walden Pond with just the basics, stripping away what didn't matter. He didn't romanticize struggle, he sought clarity. He wanted to know what was essential, what could not be taken away when all else was removed. That's what I hear in his words. Richness is not what we pile on top, but what stays steady when we let the rest fall away. And maybe that's the deeper gift of Thanksgiving, not the abundance of food for one night, but the abundance of noticing in the morning after. Gratitude grows not when the table is heavy, but when the heart is light. When I hold the mug in my hands, I realize it isn't the coffee itself that matters, it's the warmth. It's the reminder that small, ordinary things can carry extraordinary meaning if we pause long enough to notice. That's where gratitude begins, in the pause. Thoreau challenges us, but he also frees us. Because if richness is found in letting go, then we don't need to keep chasing endlessly. We can stop measuring our lives by what's missing and begin seeing what's already present. We can recognize that even silence, even an ordinary morning, can be a kind of feast. So maybe the invitation today is simple. Not to add, but to subtract. Not to chase, but to release. Not to consume, but to notice. To find the wealth that hides in the spaces we usually hurry past. The quiet after laughter, the crumbs that testify to joy, the stillness that holds memory. The day after the feast, gratitude is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It sits quietly, like a plate half full, waiting for your eyes to see it differently. Waiting for you to say, enough was already here. And maybe, just maybe, that is the richness Thoreau wanted us to discover, not in what we add to the table, but in what we no longer need to reach for. So here is the hinge, the question the silence asks as you sit in the afterglow. What if the richest thing you can do today is to let go? The day after the feast, the question lingers, what now? It is one thing to recognize the truth, that abundance can leave us restless, that enough is already here, but another to live it. Insight without action is like a candle never lit. It holds potential but offers no warmth. What we need are small human ways to carry the lesson into our ordinary day. Not grand resolutions, not sweeping promises, just pocket-sized acts of gratitude. Little steps that fit in the palm of your hand and remind you that presence is always possible. Here's the first one. Before you clear the table, pause. Look at the plate that's still half full. The mug still cooling. Instead of rushing to scrub it all away, name one memory from yesterday you want to keep. Say it out loud, even if no one else hears. The way Mom laughed at the wrong punchline. The way the candles flickered when the window cracked open. The way my nephew leaned on my shoulder without saying a word. Naming anchors the memory, pulling it from the blur and setting it gently in your heart. Gratitude begins in noticing, and noticing takes time. The second step, send one thank you message. Not a paragraph, not a speech. Just a few words that let someone know they mattered yesterday. Thanks for bringing your story. I'm glad you sat beside me. I love the way you made the kids laugh. These messages cost nothing, but they feed something we all hunger for, the knowledge that our presence made a difference. And when you give that gift, it often circles back, softening the distance that silence can grow. The third practice, 10 quiet minutes without your phone. Not a heroic digital detox, not an entire day offline, just 10 minutes. Sit with your coffee, step outside, or rest in a chair by the window. Feel the air in your lungs, the warmth of the cup in your hands, the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Let the silence fill you instead of frighten you. The world won't collapse in those 10 minutes, but you might find your restlessness easing, your gratitude deepening. These steps are small, but they are not small in power. Each one shifts your attention from scarcity to sufficiency, from chasing more to cherishing what already is. They teach you that you don't have to wait for next Thanksgiving to practice gratitude. You can practice it right now, in the ordinary light of today. And here is the truth worth holding close. When you choose even one of these actions, you are rewriting the story of your day. You are proving to yourself that you are not bound to the endless cycle of consumption. You are showing your spirit that it can be nourished by presence, not just portions. It is easy to think that change requires a grand turning point, but more often, it grows out of these quiet moments. Washing one dish with care, sending one kind text, sitting in silence for a handful of breaths. These are not trivial. They are threads that, woven together, form a new pattern of living. Because gratitude is not a mood you wait to feel. It is a practice you choose to make, and practice becomes habit. Habit becomes character, and character shapes a life that knows how to be full even when the table is not. So today, before the noise of sales and schedules pulls you away, try one, just one. Choose a memory, send a message, sit in silence. Let that be your way of saying to yourself, enough is here. I see it. I will not miss it. And tomorrow, if you want, choose another. Step by step, you will find yourself less hungry for what the world insists you need and more grateful for what you already hold. So pause now, friend. The mug is waiting. The plate is waiting. Your heart is waiting. And the only question left is, what small act of noticing will you choose today? Later in the afternoon, I warmed the leftover coffee. The mug that sat cooling all morning now filled the kitchen with its gentle steam. I carried it back to the same table, where the half-empty plate still waited, crumbs scattered like quiet reminders of yesterday. This time, though, the scene felt different. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was softer, like a blanket laid gently across tired shoulders. The house wasn't asking me to fill it with noise. It was inviting me to notice that it was already holding me. I lifted the mug and took a slow sip. The taste wasn't as sharp as yesterday's, but there was a sweetness in it, a sweetness that came not from sugar, but from presence. For the first time all day, I realized the feast was over, yes, but the table was still full of memory, full of traces, full of enough. And in that moment, the symbol returned. What once looked like absence now appeared as abundance. The plate was not just scraps, it was proof that there had been plenty. The mug was not just coffee, it was warmth, waiting patiently for me to notice. This is what the day after the feast can teach us if we let it. That abundance is not about portions, but presence. That enough is not measured by how high the dishes stack, but by how deeply we see one another. That gratitude is not confined to one holiday. It is woven into the ordinary hours we often overlook. I think of Thoreau again. His words echo here with even more weight. He is richest who is content with the least. Contentment is not the prize of the rich. It is the gift of those who choose to see. The wealth of this moment is not in what I add, but in what I allow to be enough. So maybe this is how we carry Thanksgiving forward, not by waiting for another holiday, but by finding gratitude in the scraps and silences of daily life. By learning to say, this chair, still pressed by someone I love, that is enough. This mug, warm in my hands, that is enough. This breath, rising and falling in my chest, that is enough. Because the truth is, we don't always need more. We need to notice what's already here, and when we do, something remarkable happens. The ache for more begins to loosen. The restlessness quiets. The room no longer feels empty because our hearts are awake. Friend, you are not missing abundance. You are surrounded by it. In the people who share your table, in the silence that holds yesterday's laughter, in the small acts that remind you of your own capacity for love. The challenge is not to gather more, but to see more clearly. So as you finish this day, I invite you to try one thing. Before you set the mug in the sink, pause. Feel its weight in your hand. Notice how the warmth has cooled but not disappeared. Let it remind you that gratitude is like that. Sometimes quiet, sometimes faint, but always present if you will just hold it a little longer. The feast has ended, but the story continues. The table is still full. The mug is still waiting. The question is whether we will slow down enough to notice. So I leave you with this gentle challenge. Will today be just another copy of yesterday's rush? Or will it be the beginning of seeing enough right where you are? The choice is yours. And the truth is, you already hold what you're looking for.